Hi, I'm Ketri, and I'm here to interview Andrew about his international experience as a University of Waterloo student. So Andrew, could you start by just telling us a bit about yourself, what your program was here, and what your experience was?
So I'm actually part of the environment faculty. I'm an alumni. I graduated a year and a half ago. My program is geography and environmental management, and then I do have a specialization in earth system sciences.
All right, and you went to Iceland, right?
Yes, so in my third year, I went on, or I guess in my second year, I went on the website to look for what places I can go to, and Iceland was on the list, so I jumped on that and was there for 9 months.
Okay, and why did you why did you want to go on an international exchange, and then why did you choose Iceland specifically?
Right. Actually, one of my favorite television shows is Departures, and
cool.
I had been watching that throughout first and second year in university, and they had gone to Iceland. I hadn't thought about doing an exchange at that point, but just one day I just wandered onto the link, and I went down the list of places to go, and Iceland was near the top, and so at that point I was actually 2 months late from the registration.
Oh.
And I just went in to ask the coordinator for the environment faculty, and she gave me all the information for going for next year. And then she asked, "Oh, where are you going?" And I was like, "Or where do you want to go?" And I said, "Iceland." And she's like, "Okay, we can do that."
Oh, perfect.
So it all kind of worked out just because I was the first person from the school actually to ever go.
Wow.
So they did as much as they could to help me and get me over there.
So it was all meant to be, from watching Departures to missing the deadline, but then still being okay.
I guess so, yeah. I just had to pick the most obscure random place on the list, and it was more of a learning experience for them because they had no idea what procedures to go through to send a student to Iceland. So we kind of worked together to get me there, and everything fell into place.
Great. So you went to the University of Iceland, right?
Yes.
And can you tell us a little bit about what your courses were like there? Were there any big differences from what you were used to here?
The transition was fairly similar. The courses in length were between 50 minutes to an hour and a half. Some were 3 hours, so very similar to what Waterloo's like. The teaching style was again very similar. They spent a lot of time working with independent learning and textbook learning, so somewhat what we do now. The only major difference was testing. You don't get the midterms and the projects and the final. It's typically all my courses were 100% finals, 90% finals with some participation marks. So that was the major difference. Other than that, it was a lot of field courses. But given my degree and my specialization, it was the availability was there because we were in an environment that was geologically,
geologically, it
fit. So we did a lot of field study courses and week-long excursions to a glacier and.
Cool.
Yep.
So you really got hands-on experience while you were there.
Yeah, and they even allotted time. So my volcanology course, they had a week-long trip that was undetermined because they were either going to do it if a volcano erupted, that's when you take the trip.
Cool.
And if it didn't happen at all, which unfortunately I missed it by 2 months from when it happened in April, and then the next day after I left, a volcano erupted. So I missed both of them, but we just fill in time. We'll go to a dormant volcano and learn. So
so similar to here, but volcanoes erupting, which
volcanoes erupting, glaciers are retreating. The world is a little bit more active over there.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what about what was it like being a student there? You know, university life, activities, events. Was that similar to here, or?
It's a little bit more interactive for that school and actually the country. You have a lot of European exchange students. I would say the majority of the schools is exchange students. And with that, they have a lot of student interaction programs like Erasmus. So the Erasmus Student Network was there all the time. They would plan parties or events or trips. And with that, living there was pretty well the same as going to school, where you have a lot of exchange students there. So I actually moved once when I was there. It was fairly easy. And all my roommates were either from Germany or France or Sweden, or a couple Canadians were there from out west and out in Montreal. But
So were you living in residence while you were there, or in off-campus housing with roommates?
Off-campus housing. The residence there is actually excluded only to the Icelandic students.
Oh, okay.
But they have a very well-integrated housing network site that you can go on and find houses that have been
lived in before,
and these families are exclusively renting to students. So
Good.
I just found a place on there and called them up on my Skype and made sure I had it, and yeah, just as soon as I got to Iceland, just find the place and walk in, and there's your room for 9
perfect.
months.
Convenient.
Yes, very convenient.
And on a similar note, so you found housing, you're living in Iceland. What was the cost of living like there? Was it similar to here? Was it more expensive, less expensive?
I would say it was around the same, possibly a little bit more expensive. And that was in different areas. So rent was actually a lot cheaper. I'm paying $500 a month now, and I was paying $310. Very cheap. And the living, the quality of living is really high. So I wasn't in a rundown apartment or a rundown house. The flip side is things like food and gas and any sort of touristy things that you want to get while you're there is a little bit more expensive. The tax in Iceland is 35%.
Whoa.
So for tourists, it's all right because there's a rebate that you can send in. But for when you're living there, it's just you have to go with how it is.
Yeah.
So things like food, especially vegetables, because it's hard to get vegetables to Iceland.
Yeah.
They alleviate some of it with greenhouses that they run, but food was expensive. Gas was extremely expensive if you wanted to do a trip around the island or just some day trips. And clothing as well. All those things were a little bit more expensive, but you get the flip side with the rent and even going out to just a pub. It's a little bit less expensive than it is here, but again, you have other things that are...
Yeah, exactly. And one of the great things about exchange is that people often get the chance to travel to other nearby countries while they're studying in somewhere like Iceland. So did you get to do that while you were there?
Yes, twice actually. The convenient thing with Iceland is you're halfway across the Atlantic, so you only have one more step to go, and it is fairly cheap, I would say, to get the other half of the Atlantic to get over there.
Yeah.
So my first trip was to visit another exchange student who was living in France. So we flew and met in London, spent time in London, and then we took the 10-hour-long bus ride back to Paris. So I spent time in France. We went up to Vimy Ridge, saw the memorials there. And then I flew back to Iceland. And then another trip, I met my brother for his birthday. He was celebrating his 30th, so we went to the Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, and Switzerland.
Wow.
Just riding the Interrail trains there. And once you're in Europe, it's fairly simple to get around with the train network. Yeah,
that's great. So that was easy, but was there anything that wasn't easy while you were there? Challenges that you faced?
The main challenges were time difference, so organizing times to Skype with families back home. Yeah. Because at one point it's 5 or 4 hours, and then when their daylight savings change, it's 5 hours.
Right.
And then once the winter time hits around December, the lack of sun becomes a problem. So you're looking at 4 hours of sunlight a day. The sun doesn't rise till 11:30, kind of sits above the horizon and then sets around 4:30.
Wow.
So that's an issue. A lot of people were not depressed, but just feeling down and kind of missed home a lot more. A lot of us were on vitamin C pills.
Oh, wow.
Just the lack of sun can kind of affect your mood a little bit.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, once the summer hits, you have significant amount of sunlight, and sun's rising at 3 in the morning. So you get the best of both, but it's part of the experience as well. So we are not used to that in Canada, especially not in our area. So
that'd be a big difference to adjust to.
So that was probably the only downfall. Traveling was easy in the country and out, so that gave us something to do as well. Because you're just there for school, so and you start to notice how small the city actually is. So it gets a little boring, but you have to make use of your surroundings, and it's really easy to do that in Iceland.
Yeah, great. And how do you feel that the experience impacted you as a student, as a person? What did you notice when you came back?
It was a significant change, I'd say, in my mindset and just the vision of the world and wanting to travel more. That's what you get from it. And that's kind of why we want more students to go on these exchanges, is because it allows you to see more of the world, see more of different cultures, and it kind of gets the engines rolling of wanting to do it again and do it some more. And that's kind of where I'm at now, where I'm like, I just want to keep traveling and go back to Iceland even and see more of the world. So it kind of gets you going and excited. And when you get back, you'll find that you're not depressed, but you feel like you're stuck back at home again. And I know my first term back from Iceland, I was just like, oh, I don't care. I just want to go climb a mountain or something. And so you kind of want to get back into the travel mode again. So you just have to be aware that you might actually have to slow down.
Once you start, you can't really stop.
There are times where you won't be able to travel, and you just have to realize and just look ahead. And
just goals for the future.
Yep.
Yeah. And for any students who might be thinking of going on an exchange, what would be your advice to them?
Do as much as you can. If you're going to go, it doesn't matter where it is, do as much activities as you can there. Meet as many people as you can. You'll end up with long-lasting friends. Like, I have a friend now in Montreal that I never knew before, and we get together all the time and we talk travel stories, and she's always traveling. So, and you get into the mind frame that traveling is like probably the best thing to do, and so it's a lot of excitement to look forward to, and I would say it's definitely a good opportunity to get into an exchange program.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Andrew, for joining us today and answering all of our questions, and thank you, everyone, for watching.